Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Westchester Dinner Theater. Coming out for a great program today with Sasha and and Chuck Cook. It should be a great session for learning. I think questions will be welcomed in both of their presentations. But I'd like to start off the morning with the invocation given today by Mario Guerra.
Please bow your head as we pray together. Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity to come together today. You're the source for all of our blessings, and we thank you for all the gifts that we have been given. We ask that you guide and direct this meeting so that it is full of productivity and respect for one another. Let wisdom be the teacher of the day. We thank you for helping us accomplish our work and our goals this season. It is in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mario. I'd like to welcome, we have some distinguished guests today, which we'll recognize at lunchtime. But I'd like to thank my education committee, and I'm going to turn it over to the co-chair, Chris Kenny.
Thank you, Heath, and welcome to everyone to the 53rd conductance of this event. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first presenter today, Dr. Sasho MacKenzie. Dr. McKenzie completed a PhD in sports biomechanics at the University of Saskatchewan, which focused on 3D forward dynamics simulation on the golf swing. He is currently an associate professor in the Department of Human Kinetics at St. Francis Xavier University, and his research interests lie in the optimization of human movement with a strong emphasis on sports performance. His research encompasses both optimal sport movement patterns as well as the most advantageous training techniques. Most notably, Chris Como's students have benefited from this information. He has conducted, presented, and published research on putting, shaft dynamics, 3D mechanics of the golf swing, shoe fitting, and the role of center of pressure in the golf swing. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sasho MacKenzie.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, thank you very much for inviting me down here. I'm thrilled to be able to present to a group like this. Usually I'm presenting to students on a daily basis. It feels very similar, only I look around, you guys are much better dressed and there's maybe a little less hair, but I'm still really excited. Okay, so I've had a lot of conversations with golf professionals over the last 10 years or so, and that's kind of led me to develop this style of presentation that I think a group like this will hopefully get a lot out of. A hot topic recently has been the role of science in golf instruction, and in particular I think the term biomechanics has gotten kind of lumped into that, but it's kind of one of my goals today is kind of help you guys understand what really science is, how a golf instructor uses it. And I'm going to do that through the use of looking at putting. I think it's a relatively simple skill, and we can see how maybe science can help us understand it a little bit better. And towards the end of the presentation, we're going to maybe include some interesting stuff on a pretty topical subject, heads-up putting. And it's very relevant, I guess, considering that Jordan Spieth just won a green jacket. Okay. So let's start out with a hypothetical question. Let's say a tour player comes to a golf instructor, asks for putting help. So they're ranked in the top 10 in strokes gained putting their first 5 years on tour, but something's happened. They've dropped to 157th in their 6th year. This person's never had a lesson. They don't have technical thoughts, and they've tried just about everything. You know, most importantly, the stuff that you might hear a commentator say, like, I think they're just overthinking it. They need to just react to the putt. We don't want any technical thoughts. Just play the game, have fun, relax. Well, that's usually the first thing that people will try to do, but sometimes it doesn't work. So that's where I think maybe science can come in. So let's say we had two golf instructors that this tour player approached. One happened to embrace science, and one who does not necessarily embrace science. What would be the difference? Well, I think both would troubleshoot. You know, they would analyze the stroke, take a look at the pre-shot routine. They would both probably ask the player what they're feeling, what do they think's going on. They both probably show videos of players that putt well, probably even videos of that player when they were putting well. And then they come up with a technique change. Maybe it's a change in grip, in ball position. Maybe they're going to try to minimize the head movement of the golfer. Maybe they're going to work on the aim. Maybe they're going to change the pre-shot routine. But they've come up with an idea, something that they need to change. And they're going to try to communicate that change to the golfer. Maybe they tell them exactly what the issue is. Maybe they don't. Maybe they think that's probably not going to be helpful. They're going to try to work around that by giving the golfer other information. Then they're going to come up with drills to implement that technique change. So really, on the surface, you might not know which instructor's using science, embracing science, which one isn't. Well, it's pretty simple how you can tell. The one that embraces science will actually make the player better. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's not necessarily true. Hopefully, but not necessarily true. The difference lies in how they've determined what that technique change needs to be. Okay, so I think that an instructor that embraces science isn't necessarily a technical teacher, but things they will do is that they'll test and measure the player, not necessarily with tech, and they'll learn from and apply previous scientific research. So people have already answered a lot of questions with science, so I'm going to use that information to help me. Most importantly, and what we're going to focus on today, they're going to work from a well-thought-out deterministic model, okay, or a theoretical model. What is a theoretical model? Well, this is the big thing that we're going to focus on today. I think that every golf instructor, all of you in this room, believe they have an understanding of the cause and effect nature of the swing. Okay, so a player comes, they've got an issue. You want to have the student change the cause so that you get the desired effect. The classic example, maybe none of you in here adhere to it, perhaps, hopefully you don't. Top ball, hey, keep your head down. So the idea being that the cause of the top ball was picking the head up, keep the head down, the ball is no longer topped. Okay, cause and effect. It's really a mental representation, everybody has it in their head, of how all the factors that influence performance connect together. You have some rough beginnings to a deterministic model sitting in your head right now. That's how you give a lesson. Hopefully today we'll formalize that a little bit. It's the first step in any biomechanical analysis. So I've worked with Olympic athletes in a lot of different sports. It could be bobsleigh, figure skating, a goalkeeper in soccer. Doesn't matter what the skill is. The first thing that you do as a biomechanist, you come up with this deterministic or theoretical model. What factors affect the goal or the performance? Okay, it's a flow diagram that shows a relationship between all those variables, but puts them in an organized way such that the higher factors are determined by the lower factors. Okay, it's a very organized, clear way to lay out your thoughts and understand the cause and effect nature of what's happening. Let's look at a relatively straightforward example, one that is maybe not quite as complex as golf. Okay, let's say we're trying to get somebody, an athlete, to jump as high as they can. Okay, I realize not everybody in here has a degree in physics, but I think we can all wrap our heads around this one. So I want to jump as high as I can. What does my jump height depend on? It's going to depend on my center of gravity position at takeoff. Okay, it's going to depend on my vertical velocity takeoff. How fast am I traveling upwards when my feet leave the ground, and gravity. Okay, so let's just take a look at those three things. What do I mean by center of gravity at takeoff? Well, if I was going to jump and I left the ground in this position, I'm probably not going to jump very high. So I want to be in a position where my center of gravity is as high off the ground as possible. So that's just dependent on body position. I want to be in this position when I take off, not in this position. Okay? Vertical velocity at takeoff, that's the biggest one. If I was going to throw this clicker in the air, it would go higher if it left my hand with more velocity. If I know the velocity that this clicker leaves my hand with, I can tell you exactly how high it's going to go. There are equations for that. It's a mathematical equation. Okay? But it's also going to depend on the mass. Vertical velocity is going to depend on the mass and on the vertical impulse. And this is the only equation you're going to see today. But I wanted to show you that a deterministic model is really can be based on math at the simplest level. Things happen lower affect mathematically, and you can represent it with a mathematical equation, the things above it. Vertical impulse is just force times time. There's the equation. And in fact, if I was going to do a research study where I wanted to know jump height, if I was going to train some track and field athletes and I want to know, hey, did this training improve how high they would jump, I would actually use a force plate, like a swing catalyst force plate, similar type design, probably use my AMTI plate in my lab, to calculate the impulse. I'd divide by their mass and get their takeoff velocity. That's going to be the best way to measure jump height. Most published research studies that want to know about jump height use a force plate. Thankfully, we have this deterministic model. Okay, so the lower factors affect the factors on top. So it's real easy to see if someone's not jumping high, what should they do? Well, they could either get lighter. We want to reduce their mass. Maybe they're a bit too heavy. Or we could either have them push harder into the ground or push into the ground for a longer period of time. That's it. So all our training should focus on either getting lighter or applying more force for a longer period of time. But we're not talking about jumping today. We're talking about golf. We're talking about trying to help this tour player who's now struggled after having a really good first 5 seasons on tour in terms of putting. This is just a repeat slide. So what's the goal in putting? The goal in jumping, jump as high as you can. What's the goal in putting? Sink the putt. Exactly. Pretty easy. Sink the putt. From my mathematical mind, I maybe think of it slightly different. I think, well, we want to send the ball to a specific final resting location on the green that's hopefully behind the hole. But really, we can just think of it as sink the putt. What are some factors that influence this goal? I think hopefully a lot of things come to mind. We've got posture, we've got aim, grip. There's a whole host of things that could pop into our mind about things that are going to affect our ability to sink the putt. And they seem to fall under different categories. What really we should be doing if we're going to give this fellow that needs some help a lesson or to try and determine what's wrong, we need to put these in their proper place. Okay? Understand which of these factors affect the other ones. What are the causes? How do they relate to each other? What are they struggling with? So, to do a deterministic model of putting, let's put the end goal up at the top. Let's put the ball in the hole. And then let's kind of come up with one row down, we're going to come up with what factors affect that directly. And it's really just a physics problem at this point. We've got the initial ball direction, the initial ball spin, the speed, green characteristics. What's the speed, the stemp? Is it an uphill, downhill? Is it braking left to right? And then we got other things in the environment. Gravity, is it windy? What's the sun? Is it raining out? What about Rays Creek? Well, that's something that would fit into green characteristics. So Rays Creek there's not some magical force pulling the ball to that side. The green would actually have to be sloped that way. So let's start simplifying the model and working down just from a few of those points. Some boxes are beyond the golfer's control, so we don't really need to focus on those. And some of those boxes are less likely to affect outcome. And we're going to work through this deterministic model with those two things in mind. So let's remove or set aside some of the boxes as we go. We have no control over the green characteristics or the environment. Now, maybe it's possible that your player putts terrible on really fast greens. That's fine. We'll take that into consideration. But in terms of the deterministic model, it's not something that we really have control over in terms of once we hit that putt. Okay? So we're going to remove the environment and the green characteristics. Ball spin has a really small effect. and I'll hopefully convince you of that a little later, so we're going to get rid of ball spin. The ball direction is really important, but just to kind of clarify and not let the deterministic model overwhelm us right away, we're just going to set that aside. Okay? So let's look at initial ball speed. What does initial ball speed depend on? Well, it's going to depend on the impact spot in the face. If you hit it out towards the toe or the heel, that's going to affect the ball speed. Most importantly, the club head speed at impact. How fast is that putter moving? The club head design features. What's the mass of the club head, the moment of inertia? Does it have variable depth, grooves, all those things? And the ball characteristics. How deep are the dimples? What's the coefficient of restitution of the ball? What's the mass of the ball? All those things completely determine initial ball speed, nothing else. Okay? Again, let's try to simplify. So we have no control over the club head or golf ball design features. They're really not going to factor that much in. Everybody's playing a Pro V1 or a really good ball. Everybody's got a really good putter. So we can get rid of those. Impact spot actually has a really small effect, and hopefully I'll convince you of that in a little bit. So we'll just set it aside, but we'll talk about it a little later. So we're still just kind of working down the model. Okay, so initial ball speed is going to depend on club head speed. What does club head speed depend on? This is where it's going to start to get a little more interesting. We're moving away from physics, and we have to actually use our brains to think about putting in more of a logical way and get into some things that really are particular to golf. Well, club head speed depends on the intended club head speed, first of all. And what do I mean by intended club head speed? Well, it's how hard do you want to swing the putter. So how much effort do I want to exert in this putting stroke? If I'm trying to line up to hit a putt, as I'm standing over the ball, I'm taking some practice swings. I'm trying to internalize. I can see the slope. I can get a sense for the speed, maybe the wind, how wet the green is. Taking those practices, I'm trying to internalize that feeling of how hard do I want to hit this putt? How fast do I want to get this putter head moving? And that intended putter head speed is going to be in place the moment I put my head down for the final time to hit the putt, unless you're Spieth hitting a short one. But, so I'm getting ready to go, I step up. How hard do I want to hit it? Okay, this is how hard I want to hit it. I put my head down, and I'm going to try as best as I can to execute that intended speed. Okay, it's 100% determined by the read of the green. Green reading is extremely important, probably more important than anything else you do in putting. My read of the green is really what's happening when I'm sitting there. In terms of club head speed, I'm trying to internalize all those factors, put them into my brain, and hopefully out the other end, my brain spits out a signal to my muscles that replicates that speed that I'm intending to replicate. Okay, so there's green reading, really important. Really low on the model, it affects a lot of stuff above it. But also that club head speed's not just influenced by what I want the club head speed to be, but it's also my ability to generate that intended club head speed. Okay? Can you execute that intended speed once? That's probably the most important thing. So I'm sitting here, I decide how hard I want to hit it. Did I actually, in that first attempt, if I'm hitting one putt in a practice routine, can I actually replicate that speed that I want to replicate? Or even if hitting multiple putts to a certain distance, what's my variability in putter head speed? If I'm trying to roll the ball to the same distance over and over again in a practice drill, what's my variability in putter head speed? Let's go into a little more about this speed and tension versus ability to generate. So I didn't want to overwhelm you with all these little boxes in a model first. I thought we'd look at some things more specifically. Okay. Let's say that our golfer's struggling, a particular golfer asks for help with 10 to 15 foot putts. 15% of them are falling short and 20% of them are rolling 2 feet past the cup. Okay, so it seems pretty clear, if we're looking at a deterministic model, that initial ball speed is an issue. And let's assume solid strike, so we're hitting in the center of the face, 0 path, 0 stroke, so really the issue is going to be that ball speed. And if we rule out center hit and face angle and stroke path, it's probably going to be club head speed that's the issue. But we don't know, is it the golfer's ability to read the green and determine how hard they want to hit it? Or is it the golfer's inability to generate that intended speed? We don't know. It's one of those two things. Okay? So if I was going to problem solve that speed issue, we'd probably want to ask the golfer maybe some questions. So, for example, hey, on missed putts, do you typically know where they've missed right after you've hit it? And we've all had that feeling, okay, I've got the putt lined up. Here we go, I'm getting ready. Whack, as soon as you hit it, you're like, whoa, down. You know, it's going to get away from me, or shoot, I didn't hit that hard enough. You know right away you didn't execute the speed that you intended. That might not be very reliable. Maybe they're actually getting to see some of the path of the ball. So really what we should do is probably run some tests. Now, these aren't the exact tests I would do. I'm just trying to get you guys a sense of how you would actually problem solve using a deterministic model. So we do something with block vision and multiple putts to the same target distance. Give you a clearer idea of what I mean by that. So we're going to go find a novel hole location on the practice green. We're going to allow the golfer to prepare to execute the putt. So they're going to do their normal pre-shot routine, read of the green, line it up, everything. Just before they're about to take the club head back, we're going to block their vision with a clipboard. Okay, so they're not going to be able to see. It's not going to affect their putt, but they're not going to be able to see where it ends up. So they're going to execute the putt. And then we're going to ask them, hey, where did it finish? Do you think it finished short? Do you think you hit it perfect? Did it go long? So right away, that information can be very helpful. Yeah, that's exactly how I wanted to hit it. Well, right there, you know that they've executed their intended speed. Then you remove the clipboard and say, take a look, you're 5 feet short. Shoot. So that seems like there's a green reading issue. But then probably you go further than that. You get them to hit 10 more putts to that location to get a sense of their ability to repeat that speed. Okay? Maybe there's something wrong with their technique. So what would that look like? Well, I would have them start by, instead of using a hole, maybe just a line on the green. So here's a novel hole location 1. They hit their first putt. We can see where they hit their first putt. This represents the next 10 putts. Second hole, new hole location, that yellow one's the first putt. So you can see with this pattern, what it's suggesting is that, not necessarily 100%, that there's an issue with their intended speed or their ability to read the green. Okay, that first putt is just terrible. Especially if they were telling you that they thought all putts were hit with dead weight. Yeah, perfect, but way short or way long. In contrast, maybe that first putt, I don't know if you can quite see it, but there's a yellow ball buried in amongst these white ones. But the pattern among these three is that the balls are really spread out. So they have an inability to actually, it's not green reading necessarily, but between all these putts, they're trying to hit them the same distance, their putter head speed is really changing from putt to putt. That's giving you an idea of what you should work on. Maybe they don't need to work on green. Maybe they need to work on both. This is just giving you a sense of how you can work through parts of that deterministic model. So this pattern suggests an inability to generate the intended speed. Some additional thoughts on this. It could be due to green reading if you have that inability to generate the correct speed, but it could also be related to technique. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I think if you're putting heads up and you're looking at that hole, during the stroke, that technique gives you a better ability to hit the putt at the intended speed. Okay, so it's not necessarily just due to green reading. Also, the golfer might not know what the optimal speed is. That's why I like using a line. I think maybe everybody in this room would realize that, hey, I think science has shown that you don't want to try and die the ball just in the front of the cup. Hopefully you want to hit the ball past the cup, but maybe that's an issue if you're playing to the hole, is that the golfer thinks, I'm supposed to hit it exactly that distance to the hole. That's why I think it's maybe better just to use a line, and the goal for that, that test is to actually hit it to the line. Maybe the golfer doesn't know what that optimal speed is. I'm going to lump that into green reading. Okay. Testing can be more informative with tech. You don't have to use it, but certainly if I was going to do this, I'd want to maybe have a SAM or a golf biodynamics system or a quintic ball roll system so that I could rule out stuff like impact spot, and I could know exactly what the club head speed is. Okay, let's go back to the model. So we kind of looked at a couple of blocks. Let's go back to the model. So this is where we're at. This is really where the most interesting part of golf instruction comes in. So this ability to generate speed, well, what does it depend on? Any golfer can do it once. That's what makes the deterministic models for golf really interesting. With jump height, if somebody came down here, if LeBron James came down here and I think there's actually a basketball hoop up there. If he was able to dunk in that basketball hoop, I couldn't do that. He could generate, he's got a higher center of gravity at takeoff. He can generate more force for a longer period of time than I can. But with putting, it's interesting. Any golfer can, for any putt, generate zero face, zero path, and actually have the correct putt speed for that one putt. But what allows someone like Jordan Spieth to do it over and over again, finish, I think strokes gained putting was 1.8 in the Masters, ranked #1. What allows him to do that? Well, that's where things like putting technique come in. I've got visual focus there. That's a big one that we're going to talk about later. So the ability to generate that intended speed is going to depend on your technique. It's going to depend on the club design features. Ping's done some work to show that certain styles of putting work better with certain styles of putters. And then we have other factors. This is where your pre-shot routine comes in, your mental state, how confident are you, tempo. So if you're working on tempo, do you know which of the above factors you're actually trying to improve? Are you working on tempo just for the sake of working on tempo? I don't know if that's the most efficient way to go about it. So let's take a step back, look at the big picture. Let's start filling in, completing this model, and starting to really nail down what is really important with putting, and maybe how we can come up with some drills to focus on those things. So we'll do a quick review here just to make sure everybody remembers where we're at. Apologize for the really small writing. So this is putt the ball in the hole. It's a little fuzzier than I was before. Put the ball in the hole at the top. It's going to depend on those factors that we've already discussed. So initial ball direction, initial ball spin, initial ball speed, green characteristics, and the environment. These are ones we've already looked at. So the club head speed at impact is going to depend on your ability to generate that, your intended club head speed. These are all the factors that affect your ability to generate that club head speed. And then we've got green reading. That's where we kind of ended off here. Now let's start to fill in some of the other stuff. Initial ball speed is going to depend on impact spot. We've already seen that. And on the golf ball design and the club head design. Here are two new ones. They're a little small. Club head path at impact and club face angles at impact. So club head path, that means, hey, what's the, two of them in particular that really matter. What's the attack angle? Are you hitting down on the ball? Are you hitting up on the ball? And what's your horizontal path? Is it moving in to out or is it moving out to in? That's what this box is, the club head path at impact. Okay. Then we got the club face angles. Well, there's only two angles that really matter. The loft of the putter. So is it angled up? Is it angled down? And is the face opened or closed? Okay. So those are the two things that we haven't really talked about. And you can see that initial ball direction is affected by those two, as well as the impact spot and these club design and ball design features. The spin is affected by everything. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then if we work down, just like club head speed was dependent on intended club head speed and the ability to generate it, impact spot's going to be dependent on your intended impact spot and your ability to generate it. Same with the path and same with the face. Now, these three things, this says your intended path, intended angles, and your intended impact spot. Pretty much every putt, I think it would be safe to argue that you want those all to be 0. Is it possible to sink a putt, cutting across it, and having a face to compensate? Sure, absolutely. I don't know if most people would actually be trying to do that. Potentially for the impact spot, maybe in a downhill putt, some people would say, I want to hit it off the toe to purposely reduce the ball speed. I'm not sure if that's a really good idea either, but it's up there to account for that. Okay, but really we want all of these to be essentially 0. And we can see now that our ability to generate the right face angles, to generate the right path, the speed, the impact spot, all depend on these things at the bottom. Our technique, what are the club design features, and other factors such as your confidence. Okay? But I think it's important when we're looking at that golfer who's struggling on tour to figure out up here what are the issues And then we can decide which specific technique or putter or whatever we want to do. Maybe it is confidence that we want to work on to fix that. These intended path, face angles, and impact spot are going to depend on our target line. Just in case, new term, I think everybody should know what a target line is, but that's basically the direction you want the ball to start rolling. So it's not the ball-hole line, it's not the line between the ball and the hole, but actually the direction you want to start the ball rolling on relative to the hole. That's going to determine what you want these three to be. And like I said, they're probably going to be 0. You want to hit it in the center of the face, 0 path, 0 stroke path at impact relative to your target line. And your target line is going to depend on green reading. So this, even though it's a little blurry, maybe these other projections are a little clearer on the sides. That's an entire deterministic model for putting. Okay, and I think you should be able to figure out in there where you need to work on with a particular golfer. But let's simplify it. We can really simplify it. Let's continue to rule a few things out. So let's look over here in this area where we've got initial ball direction, initial ball spin, dependent on club head path and face angles. Okay, really if we're looking at spin and ball direction, let's focus on spin, it's going to be affected by attack angle and loft. Okay, those two things are going to influence spin. Does spin really matter? So relevant to our discussion, we want to know, really, I think, if it's going to affect the consistency and the stopping distance. That's certainly something that I've heard. We want to get the ball rolling as quickly as possible. Has everybody kind of heard that before? It's probably in general a good idea in putting. Well, let's, as we said way early on in the lecture, one of the things I said is a golf instructor that's going to embrace science is going to see what previous science tells us about that. Maybe they're going to ask other golf pros, but I would go and say, what data has been collected to maybe show whether that's true or not? Well, let's take a look at attack angle. So way back in 1968, one of the first scientific endeavors in golf by Cochran and Staub, Search for the Perfect Swing, they tested this. They had a 0-degree attack angle, -5, so hitting down on it, and hitting up on it at +5, all with 0 putter head loft at impact. Okay? Balls left to face with no spin for the 0 condition, backspin and topspin. Okay? Their conclusion, one of them was, these spins are in fact about as great as could be expected on any properly struck putt. So they're maximizing this out. This is the most backspin you could hit and still consider it a putt. This is the most topspin you could impart and still consider it a putt. Their conclusion after watching where hundreds and thousands of balls rolled on the green, any slight topspin or backspin or side spin which can be applied to the ball by the putter will have no effect at all on the major part of its path or on whether or not it's going to go in the hole. Okay? Well, that was 1968. A lot of things have changed since then, so maybe we should take a look at some more recent studies. Well, Werner and Grieg in 2000, they've got a couple of nice books out, how golf clubs really work in their design. They did a similar test, but they looked at putter loft specifically, not attack angle. And they looked at loft between 0 and 6 degrees. And they concluded that it has very little effect on the variations of stop point, so similar to Cochran and Staub's. Let's take a look at something really recently, 2014, a study by Pope in conjunction with Ping. So I think these guys would probably be using the most advanced technology, some really good putters, and they'd really want to know the answer. They tested 4 lofts, negative lofted putter, -1, 1 degree lofted putter, 3 degree, and 5 degrees. So covering a pretty wide range, and with 0 degree attack angle. They specifically wanted to look at the effect of how quickly we get the ball rolling, how much does that affect the distance variation. Okay? And they come up with this variable called the roll ratio, which is really just a percentage of the total distance that the ball spends rolling. So if the ball rolls the entire time, leaves the putter, not possible, that would be a roll ratio of 100%. If you launched it in the air with a 5-degree putter, traveled half the distance in the air, skidded a bit, and then rolled out, it would have a really low roll ratio. Okay? So their conclusion was that there's no clear pattern directly relating the roll ratios to distance variances. One of the interesting findings was that they actually, from 15 feet, if you looked at the 3-degree and the 5-degree lofts, which had significantly longer skidding distances, imparted significantly more backspin to the ball compared to the 1-degree lofted putter, the 3 and 5 degree actually had less variations in stopping distance. Okay, so from my perspective, it seems pretty clear, if you look at all this evidence right from 1968 all the way up till last year by a club company, that really we could take that initial spin and really say, you know what, it probably doesn't matter that much. Now, I'm open. The great thing is this model doesn't necessarily have to change. If new evidence comes out, maybe all of a sudden Titleist makes a new ball, the Pro V2. And all of a sudden it's really going to change the way this works, and now spin makes a big difference in where the ball finishes. Maybe every green on tour changes to a certain type of grass, and the spin really affects things. But right now, based on all the science, and you know, I've tried to do similar tests in my lab, and I come up with the same result as everybody else. That spin really doesn't matter that much. And also we can look at these two things from those studies. This is all of the path of the putter, the attack angle as well as the horizontal path. This box is the loft of the putter as well as the face angle. But what we can learn looking at those previous studies is that the attack angle really doesn't matter that much, and that the loft really doesn't matter that much. Given all the ways that a golfer will swing the club and all the possible variations of loft, especially when you look at that last ping stuff that said 5-degree loft can actually, on a 15-foot putt, have less variability in stopping distance than the standard 1-degree putter. So I think we can simplify that and say that's just going to be face angle. Let's forget about loft. And the path, we can get rid of attack angle and just say that's going to be horizontal path. Okay, so we're kind of simplifying this. Now, we've already crossed out green characteristics and environment. These aren't things that we're going to work on with our player. Okay? So really, we come down to a few simple things that are under the control of the golfer that we can work on. We've got our horizontal path, our face angle, impact spot, club head speed at impact. And they're going to affect these 5 things. Our ability to generate all those. And interesting, the club head speed at impact is actually affected by 2 things. I don't think these things really play into it because we're always trying to have them be 0. We always want to, I think for the most part, we want our face angle to be 0 to our target line, our stroke path to be 0 to our target line, and we want to try to hit the center of the face. But our intended club head speed will change in every putt, so I think it's important. So really we're looking at that stuff. So let's take a look at the relative importance then of putting errors. And those blocks, how much does it really matter if we mess up our stroke path, our face angle, our impact spot? Let's start to narrow some of this stuff down, okay? To end up with a relatively simple deterministic model from which to work from so we can help our golfer get better at putting. So there are those 4 variables that we looked at that are really under the control of the golfer that are going to determine the main outcome of the putt, okay? Face angle, stroke path, horizontal stroke path, putter speed, and impact spot. Those are the 4 main things. So these 4 variables at the moment of impact are really going to pretty much 100% determine where that ball is going to end up on the green. The ones that are under the control of the golfer. So let's consider those in terms of the importance for a 12-foot putt. Why do I pick a 12-foot putt? Well, I think if you've read Mark Brody's book, he would say that if you look at putts that are really long, they're really not going to be a deciding factor. If you look at putts that are really short, everybody's sinking a 2-footer. 12 feet is kind of in the range there where we can see people sinking more putts than somebody else, and it's really going to make the difference between a pro or an amateur. Case in point, PGA pros are 30% successful from 12 feet, whereas Joe golfer is about 15% successful from 12 feet. So what accounts for the high percentages of misses? In other words, what should the instructor work on? I think you need to ask 2 questions related to how we can look at that deterministic model. First question is, how much error is there actually in those variables for the typical putter? what is the error in face angle? What is our ability to repeat face angle? What is our ability to generate the intended stroke path? Okay, those are the two questions you want to ask. So let's take a look at the science of a flat, no-break 12-footer. This is a putting robot that I use in my lab to do the testing, to figure some of this stuff out. So the optimal stroke path, or the optimal stroke will have 0 path, 0 face angle, 0 impact spot, and the optimal putter speed. And at 12 feet, we know that a ball that's hit, seems pretty small, 0.6 degrees offline, if you just do some geometry, from 12 feet, if you send that ball 0.6 degrees offline from a line that goes right through the center of the hole, it's going to miss at the optimal speed. We'll talk a little bit about the optimal speed in a minute. So the critical face angle then for a 12-footer, how much can we mess up face angle before it starts to miss on that 12-foot putt? Works out to be about 0.7 degrees. So looking through all the literature and testing in my lab, it seems that face angle accounts for about 83% of the initial direction in a putt. So a face angle error of 0.7 degrees, or 83% of 0.6, will result in a miss. So that face angle's pointed out to the left there, we're going to end up with that putt lipping out. What about the critical stroke path for a 12-footer? Well, stroke path only counts for about 17% of initial ball direction, assuming a center strike. So we can have a stroke path error of 3.5 degrees either way. Okay, so we can really cut across this ball before it's going to miss. So stroke path, assuming everything else, as long as we're less than 3.5 degrees, we're still going to sink that 12-footer. What about impact spot, where it hits on the face? Well, for the average putter, and this is the average putter that you'd get off the rack, a 1 centimeter, so 1 centimeter from the sweet spot, is going to affect lateral error by about 1% of the putt length, and it's going to affect about 2% of rollout distance. What does that mean? Well, basically that means that you can miss, for a 12-foot putt, this is for the average putter, not even a decent one that would be used on tour, 1.1 centimeters either way. Sorry, I should be using inches. Not quite half an inch, either way, and that's going to result in a miss, 1.1 centimeters. So probably for the average piece of equipment on tour, it's probably going to be closer to 1.7 centimeters before it will result in a miss. What about the optimum speed? Well, optimum speed is one such that the ball will have the greatest probability of going into the hole over a whole bunch of different paths. How do you determine that? A lot of putts with the robot. So Pels was the first person to do this, but basically to determine the optimum speed in my lab, you figure out the putter head speed. We got that little putter robot. You figure out that putter head speed where you can get at least one ball to go in the hole. This happens pretty quickly. And then you say, okay, let's try some different paths. Okay, and we'll adjust by 0.2 degrees. Hit some putts. So you hit, in my lab, we do 25 putts covering all paths across the hole at a particular speed. Then we increase the speed, go through the exact same paths. And we increase the speed a little bit more, go through the exact same paths. And by the end of the day, you've got a whole bunch of putter head speeds over a whole bunch of paths, and you say, okay, which putter head speed over all those paths resulted in the most balls going in? Okay? And as it turns out, it typically in my lab, it rolls the ball about 45 centimeters past hole. It's going to depend on the speed of the green. Really, what we're trying to balance out, it's a trade-off between the green irregularities. So even on the artificial turf in my lab, there's some green irregularities. So as that ball gets the hole, if it's slowing down, if you're just trying to die it in the cup, those green irregularities are going to send it off left and right. Versus a hard lip out. So if you're like, I'm going to rule out all those green irregularities, I'm going to hit it with a lot of speed, that might be fine. If your path is perfect, the ball's going to travel right to the back of the hole. But all of a sudden, if you're a little bit left or right, that speed's going to be too much. So there's going to be that optimal speed where the majority of balls go in given a whole lot of paths, potential paths. So for our lab, it was the putter head needed to be moving at 143 centimeters per second. Doesn't really matter, but just that we determined it. Okay? Now let's start looking at, so we got those 4 main deterministic factors that affect the outcome of a putt. But what we have to do is we're not robots, we have to layer that, on top of that we have to layer on what's our ability to generate those intended paths, face angles, impact spots, and speeds. Okay? So face angle variability for Joe Golfer. If I said to you, if I got anybody in this room, maybe you guys aren't Joe Golfers, you're probably a little bit better than that, but if I got everybody in this room to stand up, what we mean is I want you to hit 100 putts to that hole, and I want you to just drop them straight in the hole every time. And we could measure your face angle. We'd use a Sam Putt Lab or something like that. We could say, okay, what is that variability in face angle? And it's about 0.9 degrees, about 0.5 for the average touring pro. So then we have to say, okay, at what face angle will the ball miss? Well, we know that that's going to be, we looked at that, 0.7 degrees. So if I'm trying to get it to 0, but I've got that variability, me it's 0.9, for you guys it's 0.5, okay? What percent of 12-footers would a golfer miss due to their ability to generate that face angle? So sometimes it's going to be 0, but sometimes it's going to get all the way out to that 0.7 and I'm going to miss. What percentage of the time? Well, for Joe Golfer, it's about 44%. And for the pro, it's going to be about 8%. Now, for the best guys on tour, the best putters, Jordan Spieth, it would probably be 0. It would be like less than 1. His variability in face angle would probably be so low, I'm just guessing, but there's data for European Tour putters that show that they could just unconsciously hit 12-foot putts in all day because their variability in face angle is just so low. So this is the average guy on tour, though, is only going to miss 8% of their putts from 12 feet due to an error in face angle. So if they hit 100 putts, 8 of them would miss due to an error in face angle. What about stroke path variability? Okay, so my stroke path variability is going to be about 1.35 degrees. I'm trying to have 0 stroke path. Sometimes it's going out to the left. Sometimes it's going into the to the right. For the pro, it's about 0.8. So we know that it can get up to as high as 3.5 degrees for a 12-foot putt before the ball is going to miss. What percent of 12-footers are going to be missed by me due to my error in stroke path? About 1%. And for the pro, it's way less than 1%. Stroke path just isn't that important. We just never mess up stroke path enough. The odds on Jordan Spieth hitting a stroke from 12 feet, having a stroke path that's 3.5 degrees off where he wants it to be, minuscule. It's just not going to happen. There'd have to be a big roar on another green, and you'd have to have a little bit of a flinch in order to get it all the way out there to 3.5 degrees off. What about impact spot variability? So this is an average golfer from a study that I did and measured very precisely where the impact spot was. So the variability impact spot for the average golfer is about 0.5 centimeter. For the pro golfer, it's about 1/3 centimeter. And so those red dots represent 20 impact spots from this. This is just average. This guy had a 15 handicap. He wasn't a particularly great putter. Those yellow dots represent the 1.1 centimeters. And this is for just, if you go into your average sporting goods store and grab a putter off the shelf. This isn't a modern putter that would be used on tour. Definitely not one that's got a really high moment of inertia. Okay? That's a conservative estimate at 1.1 centimeters. So you can see this 15 handicapper wasn't a particularly good putter. In those 20 putts, he never even got out to 1.1 centimeters. So you can figure out, you know, kind of what the result's going to be. What percent of 12-footers would Joe Golfer miss due to a poor impact spot? About 1%. Pro, way less than 1%. Especially with, you know, Ping's got the variable groove thickness. You're just not going to miss-hit it enough to make much of a difference in how many putts you sink. Now, maybe for some reason, your particular golfer, that is their issue. That's all right. Let's measure it and find out. There's the information. Is he outside 1.1 centimeters very much? Nope. Okay, that's not the issue. Or maybe he is. Maybe he's all over the map. Then, okay, at least we know we can address that. But we know what we're working with. It's a deterministic model. What about the optimum putter head speed? This gets a little more complicated because it starts to be really dependent on whether you have a breaking putt or not. In this particular scenario we're setting up, we have a flat 12-footer. So for our lab, when we're looking at 12-foot putts, at 131 centimeter putter head speed, balls start to die short or kind of fall out left and right. At 158 centimeters, remember the optimum was 143, at 158 centimeters, they start to pop out the back of the hole. So if a golfer judged the correct speed correctly, they're actually able to execute it, what percentage of putts would they miss? Joe golfer about 5% and the pro about 1%. But that goes up dramatically if we have a breaking putt. Speed becomes way, way more important, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so putting error summary. Face angle's king for amateurs. Average pro would still sink 90% of their 12-footers due to issues with face angle, but it's still important. So what about the rest of the misses then? You know, guy on tour is only sinking 30% of their 12-footers. Well, green inconsistencies, hope nobody in here has the putting yips, because this will drive you crazy. But Pels, and he's done this a bunch of times, best case scenario on an excellent green, if you had his little true roller, if you were rolling them out, about 20% of putts would miss from 12 feet, just due to green irregularities. There's actually a big difference from the start of the day to the end of the day. Cochran and Stobbs did this as well back in 1968, probably not on as good as greens, but they're probably using pretty good greens, and they found that from 20 feet, 50% don't go in due to green irregularities. So right away, you're only from 20 feet, you're only working for 50%. Best case scenario. If you sink every 20-footer all day, you were pretty darn good, pretty darn lucky. But what it highlights for me is that green reading, and especially judging the correct speed, is really, really important. What about technique then? It was all that stuff, your ability to generate the proper face angle, impact spot, all that stuff. What about technique? It affected a lot of those. Well, here's an interesting example. This is from Dave Pell's book. This is Bill Rockwell, 1977 World Putting Championships. He beat a lot of tour pros on the way. I don't think he won it, but he finished pretty high up, ahead of a lot of touring professionals. That's a really challenging way to putt. The technique probably matters. Don't get me wrong, I'm a biomechanist, so I'm not going to sit here and say the technique doesn't matter, but show me some data. Let's take the deterministic model. If you really think that this grip change is going to make your golfer putt better, then tell me which of those parameters it's going to affect. Are you going to reduce the ability to generate impact spot? Yep, I'm not buying that unless they've got a terrible impact. Show me their impact spot, first of all. Is it outside 1.1 centimeters? Okay, then let's see if we can find something to work on that. But if it's not even outside that, why even bother? Maybe face angle, maybe moving to the claw grip is really going to reduce the variability in face angle. That's fine, but let's measure it. It's not going to take any amount of time to get someone set up over a flat putt. Okay, let's try your old grip. Here we go. How many do you miss? 10-foot putt, you can start to see whether face angle is going to be the issue or not. Now let's switch grips. Hey, yeah, that really did make a difference, and it probably was face angle based on the test we set up. Okay? Or at least a theory based on that deterministic model. This technique change is going to affect this, which affects this, which is then going to determine whether the ball goes in the hole. Okay? And the issue with putting, unlike that jump height example I gave, is that virtually any technique can generate the sufficient conditions to sink a putt. Even standing on one leg and holding the putter between your toes. This guy clearly can get a zero path, zero impact spot, zero face angle, or at least within the tolerances and the correct speed to sink a lot of putts. Okay? It's all about the variability and reducing that variability. Could be through technique, though. Okay, green reading and speed. To me, these are just by far the most important. So a conservative guess would be that from 12 feet, the ability to read the green is going to determine whether 50% of those putts go in. And this would be on a breaking 12-footer, not just that flat 12-footer. That's how important. Is there any aim point? I feel like I should be doing a plug for aim point. I should be getting some kickbacks. So while determining the target line, which is part of the green reading, okay, where do I want to start this ball? It's important. The correct speed is way more important. Pels says it's 4 times more important, and I would agree. He did this neat little test where he actually took 12-footers, relevant to today, at just a 4-inch breaking putt, and determined that 80% of those misses, 80% of the putts that were missed, were due to an inability to get the speed right. Okay? So speed's really important. In particular, the ability to generate that speed on the first attempt is really important. So you're assessing the stimp, you're assessing the speed of the green, uphill, downhill, wind, how much moisture there is. You're assessing that. You're getting ready to go. Okay, put my head down. Can I repeat that intended speed? Well, is there a technique during the stroke that might tie into this green reading that would give the golfer an ability to more accurately generate that intended speed? I think so. If we, these are slightly different colors, not showing up here. But if we look at this, this is our intended speed, which is based on our green reading. Okay? This is what we think, how hard we want to swing the putter. There's our club head speed. It's also dependent on our ability to generate that intended speed. Now, something can happen, though, depending on the technique we use, that could really mess this up. Let's say I read the green perfectly. Got my intended speed. What in technique could affect my ability to generate that? Well, there's a really interesting thing that a guy by the name of Labs showed in motor control research a long time ago, 1974, I think. Nothing to do with golf, but he showed that as soon as you take away the object that you're trying to reach to or throw something to, as soon as you occlude vision of that, you immediately begin to forget how far away it is. So if I'm sitting there lining up a putt, get ready to go, yes, this is exactly how hard I want to hit it. I've got it. It's locked in. Put my head down, instantaneously, I begin to forget what my intended speed was. So the longer I sit there, and it's an exponential decay, whoop, all of a sudden it goes from thinking, I've got a 12-foot putt that I got to hit this hard, and that signal starts to decay in my brain, and by the time I execute my stroke, who knows how close I was to that intended speed. Well, that's where visual focus during the putting stroke comes in. So do you want to be looking at the ball during the stroke, or do you want to be looking at the hole? So this is a study I did, I can't even remember, maybe 2009, looking at visual focus during the putting stroke. Pretty topical given who just won the Masters. So wanted to set up a test where we had a near target, a ball, and a far target, the hole. Happens in putting all the time. There's an inherent advantage to looking at the far target. It's been shown in dozens of sports and situations. If you're shooting a basketball, you want to look at the hoop. Okay? It's been clearly shown that there's important information that allows you to judge that correct amount of effort. But what if you need to strike the near target first, like in golf or hockey or billiards? Well, in billiards, it's been shown using those goggles that expert billiard players, unlike beginners, focus on the far targets. You don't look at the cue ball. You look at the far target. Maybe it's the bank, maybe it's another ball you want to hit, but you're definitely not looking at the cue ball during the stroke. Okay? So really the question is, we seem to be stuck in this paradigm in golf instruction that must be that if I don't look at this ball, I'm going to miss-hit it. Okay? I'm going to get a bad impact spot, face angle, or stroke path. So I wanted to know, can the golf ball be struck with sufficient accuracy while focusing on the target? I'm not the first person to do this. Way back in the 60s, a guy by the name of Bowen looked at whether you look at the ball or the target. It's repeated several times. What was different about what I did, probably most recently by Appenfels and Christina, Eric Appenfels, I believe, what was the course? Can you help me? Is it Pinehurst? Yeah, thank you. But I came at it from a slightly different way, using a deterministic model. I wanted to know, hey, are there some factors that are going to affect other boxes more than some of those factors are going to be affected more depending on whether you're looking at the ball or the hole. We'll get into that in a second. So the pre-test took 32 golfers. They had 10 putts heads up, 10 putts head down, created 2 equally skilled groups for practice. So one of those practice groups did heads up practice. Another group did heads down practice. They had 5 sessions of 100 putts over 4 weeks. And then the post-test was the same as the pre-test. So they'd hit 10 putts looking at the hole, 10 putts looking at the ball. So here's an example of the setup for heads-up putting. Just looks exactly like Jordan Spieth. I used the Tommy system, but I wrote my own software and actually published a study before this one showing that methods were pretty valid and get a really accurate representation of impact spot, face angle, stroke path, and putter head speed. Tommy hardware was actually pretty good, just the software was a little sketchy. So this is hitting that heads-up putt from 4 meters or 12 feet. So the measured variables, well, I wanted to assess quality of impact. I just didn't want to know whether you sank the putts. I wanted to know whether looking at the hole affected quality of impact, face angle, stroke path, impact spot. I also wanted to know whether it improved your ability to generate the required effort. So that's the advantage. Theoretically, looking at that far target, like in basketball, billiards, darts, everything else in the world, you can judge that effort a little more accurately. Okay, so we used putter head speed to look at that. And then we also wanted to know, hey, what was the success rate, number of holed putts? So what you can see here, this is practice session number 1. All these golfers come in thinking that I was crazy. Why are we even bothered? Why are we doing this? They all were traditional putters. They did not putt very well heads up starting out, definitely better with the traditional method. But look what happened after the 5th session. Heads up was a little bit better. Okay, this wasn't a ton of practice, just a little bit of practice. Okay, number of holed putts. So quality of impact results. So the theory would say, and probably the whole dogmatic paradigm of why we need to look at the ball during the stroke, don't look away, you're going to affect your quality of impact. Face angle, no difference. Stroke path, no difference. Impact spot, no difference. Speed control results, there's a significant difference. So on the post test, heads up putting had a significant reduction in their variability in putter head speed. So over those 10 putts, they had a much tighter variability in putter speed. They were able to repeat that putter head speed significantly better than the heads down group. Better speed control. And if we look at our deterministic model, that's way more important than impact spot or stroke path anyway. So that's what we want to improve. So the take-home message was that looking at the far target or the hole does not affect the quality of impact. But why would that be? Well, I think it's easy. It's a small range of motion. Effort level is pretty low for a putt. It doesn't require a whole lot of coordination. And we can reproduce that stance in every putt. So every putt's the same here. Looking at the far target improves speed. Why? Well, as soon as we look down, we begin to forget how far away that hole is. I would never shoot a basketball looking down. I can't remember how far away that hoop is. I think it becomes even more important for uphill, downhill putts. That's one thing that Appenfels looked at, and I think they actually showed that heads-up putting was even better. So application to a putting routine. Don't work on path or impact spot unless you think it's fixing the face as well. And if you are, confirm that the mechanics you're working on will actually affect the desired parameter. Okay? What are you trying to improve with this drill? I think a general take-home message is that pretty much anybody that's practicing putting should try to hit as many different putts as possible to as many different targets. You need to work on your green reading and your ability to judge the correct speed. I'm actually a little surprised that Jordan doesn't putt heads up more often. He just does it in the short putts. I'd love to see how well he putts heads up from different distances. But then again, if I won the Masters and led in strokes gained putting, I probably wouldn't be changing anything. And that's fine. Some people have an incredible ability. It's quite possible that looking down at the hole, or looking down at the ball, does not decay their ability to remember where that hole is. But let's figure it out. Let's know from the deterministic model. Let's run some tests. Let's find out. See where your golfer's weaknesses are. Where should you emphasize that practice? Maybe he just wants to remove those mechanical thoughts on the short putts. All right. Thanks. Questions? Do I have time for a few questions? Yeah. Sure. All right.
We have time for a few questions, so anybody have a question?
Yeah, no study, but I'm very clear on this in the paper. You can just go to Google my name, go to my webpage, you can find all my studies. One of the final paragraphs in discussion, I think it's like curling. There's not too many people curling here probably. But you would want to pick a spot on your target line. Okay, so if you think, I want to start the ball 10 inches to the right of the cup, then you're trying to hit the ball 10 inches to the right of the cup. You stare at that spot on the green. It gets a little nuanced. I think some players might respond better if you have a downhill putt to picking a spot in that target line that's short of that. Maybe it works better if you say, hey, I want to hit this as if it's a 6-foot flat putt. Really, it's 12 feet, but because it's downhill, it's going to break that much. That's getting a little nuanced, but definitely on the target line, not at the hole in the breaking putt. Yeah. That's a good question. I have not, no. And that might even be something that might be challenging to look at because maybe they don't replicate it in practice. You have to do some stuff to try to set up. If confidence is the issue, you can maybe figure that out, or tension, by ruling out everything else. Hey, in practice, this guy's nailing everything in this deterministic model. Now we need to go spend some more time with the sports psychologist or do some hypnosis or something like that. Good question. Yeah, that's a great question. So where does that fit into the model, right? How do we want our putter head accelerating or decelerating? Well, it doesn't really, unless you had a really good theory about why that would affect face angle variability, let's say, or speed control variability. And that's possible. If you're slowing down, in my opinion, I think that it's maybe a bit like pushing one of those dollies at the airport or some of the trolley around here. If you're pushing something, applying force to move it, and the mass is out front, it can get a little wobbly. I think you want to be pulling it. It's going to go a little straighter. There has been a study that seems to think that people are slowing down. I would hesitate to say that it was probably a filtering issue. So they're filtering, ball hits the club head speed, and they filter that out, and all of a sudden it looks like the putter was slowing down before. That's my guess. Never. I've never seen a pro golfer with their impact spot that's ever been approached 1.1 centimeters. It's possible, and I want to know that. Maybe there is a pro golfer out there that does that. I'd want to measure it and know it and address it. But it's pretty easy to figure out if impact spot's an issue. So unless you're getting outside 1.1 centimeters, on a 30-foot putt, even if you're off the toe or the heel, you're still going to be looking to two-putt anyway, so it's still not an issue. It's a good question, but we can use the available information to say, does it matter? And we look at the individual person. So if you're grinding over putts, trying to hit the center of the face all the time, as opposed to being half a centimeter this way or half a centimeter that way, you're not going to see any benefit to the number of putts you sink. Oh, sorry, Michael, and then... 11.5 was a stimp, so pretty quick. Could you clarify what the line putter versus spot putter? I see. Yeah, with this particular study, I wanted to, scientific term, what's called maximize internal validity. Rule out as many things as possible to make sure that does looking at the hole affect those things? Does looking at the hole affect putter head speed? So what we actually did was we gave people explicit instructions. Heads up putting, you're staring at the back of the hole. Heads down, you're looking right at the ball. We have no idea whether they were a spot putter or a line putter. We actually even lined the balls up for them. So we had a Carpenter laser that would go right over the ball, down the target line to the back of the hole. We had an alignment mark on the ball. Researcher would line up that alignment mark. Every golfer had that it was to make sure everything was the same. Some people use line marks, some people don't, but we wanted to make sure that we were maximizing our internal validity for that particular study. Yeah, in our lab it was 45 centimeters, very close to the number that maybe a little further than Pels had come up with. That's going to be dependent on green speed. So really, green speed and the bumpiness. The more bumpy the green is, the faster you want that ball moving. At Augusta, that distance past the hole would be really short because you don't need to wash out those irregularities in the green. Pebble Beach, you probably want to whack it pretty hard. Be my guess. Yeah. That's the putter head. Yeah, that's the putter head. Centimeters per second. So it would divide that by 2.54.
I think we have one more question. I think Carl had a question. That'll be our last.
Yeah, I guess that comes to the question of what is the importance of the practice stroke. Maybe for a guy like Davis Love, it's to actually emulate, I'm thinking full swing. He takes a really hard practice swing to actually emulate what he's going to try to repeat. For a lot of other players, it's more about I want to feel the club, more so than I want to get a sense of exactly what I'm going to do. What's that putter head feel like to me? What's the club feel like? Fast strokes allow us to feel it better, as opposed to I'm going to make a stroke that I'm exactly going to emulate. So I just want to get a feel for this club. I have my confidence that when it comes time to execute it, I feel that club, I know how hard I want to swing it, let's get a good feel for it, and now I can still execute that without exactly repeating the stroke. What was the second question? Yes, and I would advocate heads up putting should be tried by everybody. In that deterministic model, do you suffer from forgetting how far away the hole is? If you can heads up putt and still have a small impact spot, good face angle, and good stroke path, why deny yourself that visual information that's clearly important? Now, if you pick your head up to putt and you're all over the place, you're digging the putter into the ground, you've given it a go for a week, yeah, stay away from heads up putting.
Okay. Oh.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It is a great book. Yep.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Please welcome or thank Dr. Sasha MacKenzie.
Good.